Welcome to another session of Ask the Druids. And today we have on Angie and John, who have an amazing podcast that they've put together each week. And both are interested, or John is interested in tarot, and he's a tarot reader, and Angie is a channeler, among other things she does as well. So, welcome, you guys.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, to get us started, we'll go into kind of what your background is, but what is the topic we're going to be covering today?
Well, I guess we had kind of talked about ancient wisdom and ancient divination tools. I think we talked a little bit about tarot and maybe pendulums, cartomancy, runes, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Old ancient ways.
Okay. And what made you guys come up with that topic? What's the connection you have to it? I
It
know you're,
popped into my head.
but
Now,
wow.
both Angie and I are, I do tarot, and Angie does oracle as well as channeling, a bunch of other things. It's something that we talk about almost every week anyway, in
Hmm.
one way or the other.
Okay. Very cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves? I know Angie, you've been on before. John hasn't been on yet, but tell everybody a little bit about yourselves and your podcast and kind of what you've got going on.
Angie, why don't you start? Talk about the podcast.
Cool. So our podcast, I lovingly call it a talk show. Um, but it's set up as a podcast on YouTube as well. It is called Does It Resonate with You? And we just picked topics out of where we're guided from, or the air, or the news, or the emails, or all kinds of different places. And we discuss them to figure out what resonates with us in the hopes that you will hear something that will resonate with you. Not expecting you to change your mind, not expecting you to change our minds. We're not even expecting to change each other's minds. But it's interesting that the two of us tend to agree for the most part on many things. There
Mm-hmm.
are things that we don't, and that
Yep,
those are actually kind of fun conversations as well. But
indeed.
so that is the show in a nutshell. Basically, me personally, I was a sponge for negative energy. I was told I was a sponge for negative energy by a psychic who then did not tell me what to do about it. So I set off on a mission to figure it out. And what I found out was that the more I brought my energy into alignment, the less I knocked out the street lamps. I didn't set off train. What do you call those things? Train
Crossing
gates.
signals.
I stopped setting those off. As soon as I got my energy under control, all that stopped happening. But then what did happen was I found it much easier to make these connections to the higher wisdom and all these wonderful beings and different guides, teachers, and angels that I can channel. And it seems to be unending. Like, I can channel my guides, I can channel your guides, I've channeled, some of the archangels. Just depends on what you need in the moment when I'm working with you. So it's kind of a cool way, once you understand that intuition is how you connect to, receive, and interpret energy. And when you learn that and you learn how to align with it, the sky is the limit. There's no limit to what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Cards, tarot, oracle, channel, except for win the lottery, because that's not really allowed. But anyway, that's too random. That's not easy energy to connect to, right?
No.
Like,
No, no, no.
anyway, so John is my co-host, and he is teaching me about the framework of tarot, and I'm learning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I don't have it all under control, but it is interesting that it
Mhm.
has this beautiful framework that you can be fluid with the information once you understand the framework and how it works.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us what brought you? I mean, really, John, how did we even meet? Some tarot group, right?
Yeah. It was online. It was one of Radley's groups,
Okay.
and I was on the Facebook group posting and asking questions, and you were telling me I wouldn't post that.
Oh, is that? I'm good for that kind of thing.
Yes. Curiously though,
I
there's
was
like
trying
three
to
or
keep
four
you
of
out
us.
of trouble.
Yeah.
You did too. They kept taking my posts down because I was too markety. So
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Well, see, but when you read the rules, no.
I I was coming as close as you could to the edge of the rule, but not trying to go over. Well, anyway, you set me straight.
Right. And that's all subject to interpretation, right?
Indeed.
Whoever creates the rules, whatever they decide they are, that's what you have to follow. So really what I was looking at was what I had seen in the past.
Yep.
And just truly trying to give him benefit of my experience with what I had already seen happen in the group.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, so that was what that was all about. And now we just have become great friends,
Mhm.
and we laugh and we have deep conversations and we think and talk, and it's just kind of amazing, really.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Best part of the week.
wonderful. Yeah. And I love that, tarot's kind of where you met, and now one of the tools we'll talk about today. And that's how I got started, opening up. And before I channeled, it was all I read tarot. That was my thing. So I think
Nice.
this is a great topic for today. And what we haven't touched on.
Tarot is a great jumping off point for the conversation and for everybody that's kind of
Yeah.
doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, it has a little too many rules for me, so that's why I like oracle cards. Because it gets a little complicated with all that framework, right?
Yeah.
And this means this, and the 3 of this means a heart attack. How do you know that? Why do you know that? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I think you can also interpret it differently, because I read them. I've always read tarot very differently than, like, John, probably how you read it when they say, oh, this means heart attack. This means marriage. This means this. I'm like, well, maybe not for me. So I'm all about create your own structure of what it means.
Mhm.
And that's just,
Yeah, there's a way to read intuitively, and then there's a way to be very strict and rule based. And for everyone, it's a little bit closer to one or closer to the other. It's very, very personal how people read.
Yeah.
I find it interesting also because I do read, a lot of people say, well, if you don't understand tarot, why do you read tarot cards? Because there's tarot decks that I love, right? I this is an interesting conversation, and one actually a question probably, when we've been communicating with the druids. I find it so fascinating how a tarot deck can adapt to the reader, right? Because John, you understand the framework, and the cards lay themselves out in a way that the framework supports for you to get the information. Me, I don't have the framework down. I use a little bit of numerology when it comes to it. Like 5s are about change, and 1 are new beginnings, and 9s are about endings. So. For me, the numbers come up in a little bit of a different way, maybe, than they might. And so I spent a lot of time saying, no, they're paper and ink, right? Which is not to say I couldn't get information from them, but it was really a way for me to connect with my higher wisdom, right?
Right.
But then I think as you start working with the cards and start really imbuing them with your own energy, then they start to react in a bit of a different way. So I would love to hear their take on how that
along that
what that looks like.
Yeah.
Along that same line, let me give a illustration. When I first started with tarot, I was very much like, this is a 3-card spread. It's past, present, and future. That's how it's supposed to be read. And in the class we were taking, Radley Valentine said, well, we're going to have you make up your own spreads. And I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense at all. This is the spread. This is how it's written. And then as I started realizing, oh, wait, this is just a way to get intuition to kind of manifest itself pictorially. Then it's like, oh, I see. I can even create a spread almost on the fly. I'm going to all right, I'm going to pull this card, and this card for me is going to mean what's going well for this person. The second card, let's just say that what's not going well. And because you are putting your intention out there and you're receiving the information, you can literally create the spread on the fly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd like to know, I want to know from the druids.
Yeah.
How tarot keeps evolving kind of for the times. And is that continuing to happen, or do we, I'm just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, let's jump in and let's have them answer your questions, because I'm kind of getting a little bit of downloads here and there, but let's have them
me too.
Really talk through what there is. So, we'll see what they have to say and how it connects back with you guys. So you ready?
All right, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Okay. When you look at all of the different tools that there are for people to be able to understand energies that are coming in, to have more of that knowledge of what is coming in the future, what they need to shift or what they need to see. The tools themselves are truly all about understanding that what connects with the person that is receiving the session and the person giving the session. And then the third part of it is the energies that need to come through. For only information is given of what that being's soul wants them to know at that moment in time. And so, as those are coming in, it truly allows for that shifting and that knowingness of what is there. And that it is because that if all of the energies, all three energies are equal, they are balanced and the information will flow easily and fluidly to the next person. So yes, you are correct that one reader may pull cards and get the information, and another person may pull very different cards but also get the same information. It is because of what is shown and what each of those cards mean to them. Where on one, something may pop out to them and they may say, oh my gosh, I see all of this water in there. It's going to be very emotional, but it's going to flow very well. And someone else may see, a field with wheat blowing through the air and they may say, oh, it's going to flow very well. Two very different things that would be interpreted differently, but to them it means what it is. And so it is that balance of the information and the energy that allows for the flowing to come forward. Does that make sense to you on your
Mhm.
first question?
It does.
Okay. So then when we talk about how has it adjusted over the time, how has it moved over the time, how has it evolved? And as all tools evolve, the same way you can look at knives have evolved from if you go back a millennia, they were very different. They were very heavy. They weren't as sharp. They were made all as one piece many times. There was structure to them. Where now, if you look at a knife now, can be very light, it can be very sharp, it can have these points to it that maybe were more difficult to get back then. And that is just showing how that it evolves. So the same thing with tarot or oracle or any cards or any tools that are there. The more of the understanding that it is around it, it also has to evolve with the energies and with the planets and all of those things that are there. For as that is coming in, it truly allows for that knowingness that the reader that is there is able to accept that information. And it has to work with modern times. For if you are using a deck and we're reading back 400 years ago, that would connect with that time frame. But to bring that deck forward, you could still read it and still utilize it from there, but you couldn't use the same principles that were there. So you couldn't take the reader from 400 years ago and bring them into the present time and say, give me a reading, understand what these cards are telling you. What is this energy speaking to you? It wouldn't fit because there are so many differences. Now you're talking about technology and vehicles and changes in society and relationships and all these other things that they wouldn't fully understand. So, the same way that beings have evolved, humans have evolved, technology, how you do things, the same thing could be said for the tarot. But understand that the tool that's used, whether it be tarot or oracle or runes or pendulums or whatever it is, that it is reading off of the energy that is there, that it is really the conduit that connects the two that are in front of them, plus the energy of source or the soul or the being to allow for the information to flow. So it is about the interpretation of the reader and how that information flows forward. That is how it works and how it is reconnected. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Well said.
What questions do you have for us then before we let her continue on with the discussion between the three of you?
I'm curious if there's something that's out there that we haven't really grasped fully yet. I feel that ancient cultures were more intuitive than we are, and I feel like it feels like modern cultures and modern people are so much up in our heads. Are we are the light workers kind of at the forefront of like bringing that intuition back into our lives?
Yes, you are very much correct in that belief and assumption that yes, when you go back many millennia, they were much more intuitive and more connected before Earth kind of fell backward under more of the veil. Now, you have to understand that your belief of what technology is and what you have is very different than what they had, but it was looked at very different ways. Now, if you think about how connected they were to their intuition, they were more reliant on the energies of the planet. So they were using the elements, they were using geomancy and hydromancy and all these other things that were letting the earth and the energy speak to them. So it was as if the earth is connected to source, which was the tool that provided that. And when they utilized that and let it come through, that is when so much came forth. And they were able to use that because at that time, they perhaps didn't have more of the cards or the pendulums or the runes, or they
Mm,
had runes, but they were rocks with things written on them, that it was just done in a different way. But the earth and the elements spoke that back to them to give them the information, or the body provided the information. Where now, as beings and humans, you always need a tool, something there. Instead of looking in someone's eyes and being able to see exactly what the message is, what is coming through, being able to look at the palm or the hand, which is still used now, but not in the same way it was before. Or being able to look at the body overall and go, this is the problem. This is what it's speaking. Because all energies and everything that's happening always comes through the body, the human form. That is where you notice the energies first before it creates an ailment or it creates an energy or it gives out. So perhaps the foot then becomes problematic and doesn't work. Well, you need to look at how you're not moving forward, how you're trying to avoid something. But you could also see that in the cards because now you say, oh, well, I broke my foot many years ago and it has arthritis and it has all these problems. But you just assume that that's the way the body works instead of going, what is the energy associated with that? Why is that telling me? Instead, you look at the cards and you go, you're stalled out in your lifetime. You need to move forward. You need to let go of these things. So there's many ways you can look at it. But yes, you are correct that they intuitively use the elements, the body, and everything around them to get the story, where now you always want something tangible in your hands for that. Is that helpful?
yes, it's very helpful.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions you have before we let her continue?
I think we're all set. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
of course. Well, that was an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I have a little more I would like to add.
What else do you have, Angie?
So this is what they said, John, for you to imagine a child who comes into the world now and is connected and knows things and sees things, and how by the time they're 4 or 5 or 6, they no longer do. And it's because of that same, it's the same thing. When that child comes into the world now, they're in that pure state that
Hmm.
doesn't have access to all the technology and all the things that are around us. And then basically we as parents and teachers and just the world around us gives them all the tools that pulls them away. I think it was Walt Disney that said, um, every child comes into the world understanding how to meditate, and then we teach and schedule and school
Right.
them out of it,
School them out
right?
of it. Yep.
Yeah,
I think I've heard that too.
yeah.
So if in fact we were to focus there in the schools with the children more than we do, we wouldn't have to work so hard to fight away the technology,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes
Interesting.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Um, teaching children, allowing them to continue that practice of meditation and connecting with the energy and understanding how the world works from different eyes and imaginary friends and
Mm,
um, pictures in the clouds,
yeah.
and we say, no, that's just a cloud. Well, no, it's not to them.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So that's, if we could focus more on the children and teaching them those things rather than math in a box. Yeah, they got me with that one. Okay, so I'm back now. That whole new math thing is just too much for me.
Right.
But I think that's really interesting, like, and it's another point it was someone, I want to say it was when I was learning Akashic record reading from Andrea Hess. And she said, everyone's an empath. But in older times, we had to be more empathic because back then, when somebody was coming towards us, we needed to know quickly if they were coming towards us, were they friend or foe? Were they coming to hug us or run us through with a sword? And so we've gotten away from that because, well, hooray for me, too bad for you, right? We've all become loners. The senses of community are uh, falling apart. Let's just leave it at that, right? Falling apart. So anyway, that was really cool.
Yeah.
I love always different ways to different perspectives, because they cover blind spots and what have you. So
well, and as we were talking before, we're all getting the information from the same place, but it's just being translated in a different way,
and run through a different filter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Run through it. And it strikes me too, as we were talking about like originally tarot, let's say, when tarot was created, people embraced those fearful things a little bit more than we do now. Right? Like they were like, I think when people read tarot 400, well, it was 400 or 500 years ago, right? When it started. And they literally, like, the whole deck was tower cards, right? Heads up.
It was
heads
scary,
up, heads
very
up.
scary imaging.
Yeah.
But the point being, those people looked at it as literally a heads up, right? They weren't looking at it, like now, if somebody, oh my gosh, if somebody, you give the tower card to somebody now, they like flip their wigs. But back then, they were like, oh, okay, so this is what may be coming. Here's my heads up. What can I do to sidestep it or move away from it? So we all have a very different mindset. Back then, everybody didn't win the Little League game.
Winners and losers.
Right? I mean, if you think about, if you think, and I'm certainly not supporting the patriarchy in any way. But there were some things, people were a little bit sturdier than they are now. Now that we have all this cancel this, and I don't like this and I don't like that, and we shouldn't read this book in school and we shouldn't read that book in school, and you're like, or let's get rid of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because we don't like what Roald Dahl stood for. It's or even L. Frank Baum, the Oz. I go to Oz a lot, so sorry, it's not going anywhere. But it's really interesting that as technology has shifted and as the way we do things have shifted, so have the way we see things and our perceptions.
Right. Yeah.
If we maybe could look inward a little bit more, it would be helpful.
Yeah. I think it's about seeing, we all have that connection to the information that's there. And these tools are really just tools. I know I was told, when I first opened up and started, I said, why did you start me with tarot? They're like, you needed something tangible to believe in. If this information started spewing out, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't trust it. So that it was it was like my training wheels,
Yeah, me too.
And then so it's really about getting us to trust ourselves. So I think with the new souls coming in, if we can not break those understandings of meditation and intuition and listen to your body and see, what you need, they're going to be able to just move forward. They won't need some of these tools that are there. So
I think that's really a good point. And it's, it's interesting because if I think, I mean, my whole life I've had information or, whatever different ways you could call yourself psychic or had experiences or whatever. But when I really started to work with it, I am really struck that when I decided to move into the idea of balancing my energy and understanding, all of a sudden there was like all these voices and everything. I just kept hearing so much. And I was looking for crystals and having readings and trying to figure out how to slow this all down. And one day I got sick of it, like as I would, because you guys know me. And I said, listen, you people need to slow down and talk one at a time because I cannot understand a word you are saying. And instantly, like that, it stopped. And then they started one at a time where I could
Raise their
understand.
hand.
And that is where I began to understand that I am the one that's in control. I'm the one in the driver's seat. So if that is the only thing I ever teach people when I work with them, is that they are the ones in control and nothing is happening to them, but because it's their, I love this, they are participating in a dynamic that they have chosen.
Yeah.
Um, I think I could be happy with that. You're in control. It's, yes, they are there. Yes, they have things they want you to do. And yes, they do get, shall we say, what's the word? Pesty about it.
Yeah.
Tripping you, or you know what I mean, those kind of things. But
Oh, the head bonk. Boy,
yeah, the
yes.
head bonk.
The head
Yeah,
bonk.
right.
Let me tell you.
But the truth of the matter is, you get that head bonk because somewhere along the line you said, I want to make this connection. I want to do this work. I want to be more intuitive. And then when they show you how to do that, you don't pay attention. So they, right?
Yep.
Right? Am I right?
100%. 100%.
So, I mean, that's so funny. And I think a good test, I don't know about you guys, I'd love to hear. A really good test for me was, I at some point noticed that I had stopped saying, oh, I should have gone with my first instinct, because I do know. So I don't know if that's the same for you, but I think that's a really good test. If you're saying that to yourself all the time, then you need to start doing that, right? To start going with your first instinct.
Yeah.
For me, it came more like, you see, you recognize the download. You recognize, I just got something that popped in my head from nowhere. Let me ask about that. What is that? Oh, that's something I should pay attention to, as opposed to, gee, I wonder why I just thought about my friend from 10 years ago, and you just dismiss it. So now that those things show up, like, you think, all right, I'm listening. What do I need to know?
Yeah. I have this similar thing where I will do this, and then I don't do it. And then it backfires on me. And I'm like, I knew that. I knew I should have done that. I knew I should have, gotten the dishes out of the sink because, for whatever reason, then maybe, like people come over, the drain backs up, it's like becomes a bigger issue. So I always hear that as well, like, oh, should have done that. But I think that's just,
Yeah, I think that's different. I think that's different than I should have gone with my first instinct, right? I think that's different because I think you have made the connection. You listen, you hear them. So they tell you. And if you don't listen, you didn't take the heads up, right? You didn't grab the tower card. To me, I should have went with my first instinct is you're presented with, should I do A or B? Or is the answer A, B, or C? And I think, oh, the answer is C, but I answer B, and then it turns out to be C anyway. I should have went with my first instinct. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's two different.
Yeah, my instinct is them telling me what that's what it's evolved into. It used to be instinct, but now and I think for everybody though, we're always getting told things, whether it be through, our guides or our higher self or whatever. So yeah, mine is just elevated to, they just tell me what, what
Yeah,
to
right. Just please do that. I mean, there have been many times where, um, you know, there's a message for Val. We all know Val, so I'm sure she's been on your show, so probably you're listening.
Yeah, she has.
I have a message for Val, or you need to meet with Val, or you need to meet with Lisa, or you need to do this, you need to do that. And they will continue to say it over and over and over again until I call that person or text that person and say, listen, this is what I'm hearing. Yeah. Now I've told you. Now can they please leave me alone? So that's
yeah.
I mean, it just, when you allow yourself to be connected, or you decide that this is what you want to do, that you want intuition, you want to connect to your intuition, you're making an agreement to listen to it because it's trying to maybe make a river flow in the other direction or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, you can fight it as much as you want, but in the end, just, it's about accepting it. It's about letting the information come through and flow and
Hey,
growing.
how much of when people are completely stuck, how much of that do you think is them not actually listening to the messages?
Oh, I
Or
think it's about 95% in my
okay,
mind, because they're
okay,
not listening, they're not following what they should. They're too much either in control or fighting it, or they put a block up. And if they
okay.
would just listen and let that down, like I see it as like a roadblock. It's like they just put the roadblock down and flow through.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's my take on it. Angie, are you hearing something different?
No, the same. I was thinking about somebody I was talking to, um, and I said, well, you're putting up speed bumps. That's what they showed me. You're putting up speed bumps,
Mm,
like, but what's interesting about that too is that, another thing that people do when it comes to that kind of thing and when they're stuck, I started this case study with with 5 people. I'm working on somehow to put together some new session work that does not involve Angie having to do lather, rinse, and repeat. Because this is not something I'm interested in. So I'm looking for a framework that's lather, rinse, and repeat with some
Right.
fluidity with how I work with an individual, right?
Mhm.
So what I am noticing out of all of these people is, even though they all have different varying levels of success, none of them are very clear with what it is they're trying to create. So if you are stuck, I think that's one of the first place you want to look is, do you really know what you want?
Right.
Like
mm,
people will say, oh, I want to hit the lottery. Well, you can't manifest that, right? But you can manifest $1 million, but
mhm.
you can't just say, I want $1 million and poof.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be great?
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be so awesome if you could do that. But no, you have to start by, well, maybe you need to get a job,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think if people were to get more clear on what it is that they want, it would be, you know what else there is? And I wonder about this, you guys. Another thing I'm running across with these people is, like fear of missing out, FOMO. Like
Mhm.
if I decide to do this, if I choose this for my work or for my life purpose, or if I decide to do this, then I'm not doing that. And what if that would have been better?
Right.
And it's
They
like,
think they've closed off all other possibilities of
exactly,
success.
Yeah.
exactly. And
Right.
maybe they do that sort of subconsciously or energetically. And so technically speaking, that other option is closed off.
Right.
I think though that if you kind of look at it as a highway with exits, you didn't take exit 81, but you took exit 83 and you still ended up at, where spirit wanted you to go,
Right.
right?
And you can also get off at exit 83, turn around and get back on
Mm-hmm.
at exit 80 and go back to exit 81. Like, there's
Right.
nothing to say
No,
you
no
have to,
harm, no foul. I mean,
right. There's,
it's all good.
there is something to be said. I don't think that looking backwards serves very much,
Mhm.
but there are times for reflection and saying, oh, maybe if I would have zigged instead of zagged. So
Mm-hmm.
what can I do to fix that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How can I,
Yeah.
how can I adjust or pivot or whatever?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of stuck is ego, right? The
Right.
head.
It definitely is. And I think that shows when you're constantly having to look back, and reflection is good, but do you learn from the reflection, move forward? It also shows, are you truly in alignment? Because if you're in alignment, you're going to naturally get off on exit 182 and not even realize it and be like, oh, here I am. And then you'll be like, I'm right, instead of doing the extra long route to go forward and then back and come through again, or take the back roads to get back, to get to exit 182 or wherever you were going. But yeah, I think it's about just that flow, like just
Mhm.
the less we can control stuff. And I've had to learn this, and I'm kind of a slow learner. Less
Me
I
too.
can control, less that I try to, put boundaries up or put things in a box. So it has to look like this and smell like this and be like this, the better it is. The faster things come, the more just happier and in alignment I am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's, for me, and it's not where I was thinking we were on StreamYard, so that my little tagline is usually underneath my name, but it's visualize, align, surrender. And that is just simply just getting a picture of what it is that you want. Maybe you're the person that has to really draw a detailed picture.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you need a vision board. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just have to have an idea of where you want to go. Maybe all you need is an idea that says, I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And how do I take aligned action to get there? So
Right.
that's visualize, right?
Yeah.
And then align. Take aligned action. Get in that flow. And then when you're in that flow, you can surrender. Just put your hands up and let the flow take you where you need to go. Very much like what you said. If you're in that flow, then all of a sudden you find yourself on 182.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So is it fear that keeps everybody back? Maybe,
I think fear
right?
is a
Fear
form
of
of
missing
protection.
out,
Yeah. And
fear of success, fear of failure, fear of all of it,
yeah.
right?
But I think fear is a protection that we put up. When you're in fear, it's your ego protecting you. It's saying, "Oh, I don't,
I don't get this. I don't
yeah,
understand,
yeah,
right?
mm-hmm, yeah,
Because your ego only knows what it knows,
right,
and that's how it keeps you safe. Is keeping you
Right. In
inside
the
of
known.
what your ego
In
knows,
the known.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
right, yeah. But I think there comes times of stretching that ego to be open to more things
you
instead of
have
just
to.
in there. Yeah.
You
And
have
figuring
to.
out when is it, like when the ego says stop, turn around, and there's a bear in front of you, like, yeah, important, ego protect.
Right? Don't put your hand on the hot stove,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. But, there's other times when, the ego is like, okay, you don't need to say, oh, don't go into this forest. You're going to get mauled by a bear. Well, maybe there are no bears in the area, so.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is that I have people that I work with. Over the years, I've worked with a lot of different people, and I know one person who, when she's doing any kind of intuitive work, channeling, writing, anything like that, she literally visualizes herself taking her ego and putting it over here in a glass
Mm.
cube.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's good.
Like, just, and then I had another teacher, her advice was just ask your ego to take itself a nice little vacation, while you're doing the work. Because you're right, the ego is important as you're moving through the world as a human in the third dimension, which is where we are, no matter what anybody tells you. Um, you need that ego to you do, like it's what tells you not to pull out in front of a truck,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
so it's an important piece of the human
Yeah.
condition. But when you're looking to work intuitively and in the light, the ego can be constricting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think different people have varying degrees of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Very different, varying degrees and how they use it and how they let it come forward. It's, people always talk about dark night of the soul, and I have learned to call it dark night of the ego because our soul doesn't really, but our ego is being really pushed when we go through
Oh,
those
I
times.
like that.
Yeah. To say,
That's
oh,
good.
wait, yeah, because it's freaking out. It's like, wait a minute, what is going on here? What's
Right.
happening? Why? But it's our soul's expanding where our ego is kind of being said, hey,
Stop.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So that reminds me of one of my favorite sayings is that there are no troubled souls, only troubled humans,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that troubled humans are the result of some sort of a vibrational mismatch between the soul and the physical body,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever dissonance that creates, right? So, but the soul, there just aren't troubled souls. There aren't. It's troubled humans.
Right.
So I love that.
Yeah.
That actually sounds like the title of a book, Katie.
It
It
does.
does.
Dark Night of the Ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you guys so much for being on, and hopefully we can continue this conversation later.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
had a
Yeah.
really great time.
Wonderful to talk
And
with you.
maybe we can actually talk about what we came on to talk about in the first place next time. I think that's funny. That's why, this is how we do our show. We have an
Yeah.
It
idea of
is.
what we're going to talk
Yeah.
about, and then it turns out to be something completely different. And it's always so much better. And when you go with the energy and go with where you're guided, I think it's more
100%.
informative and
Yeah.
better for the people. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for having us
Yeah.
on.
Oh, you're very
And
welcome.
let's set up a Wednesday when you can come, and our show live streams actually on
Okay.
Wednesday.
Oh,
So let's set up a Wednesday when you can come and be on with us again, because that would be great fun as well.
Hmm.
I would love that. And so if anyone wants to contact Angie or John, their information will be in the description below. So please reach out. Start listening to their podcast. It's really cool. It's very fun where the conversations go. And with that, thank you guys again for being on, and we will see everybody soon.
Thank you.
So much.